All right, so we're going to be looking at the laws of Exodus, lesson 2. Last week we started looking at a survey of the laws. This week we continue with that. So we're going to be looking at chapter 22. So Exodus 22, and we'll be looking at verses 16 through 25 tonight. 22, 16 to 25. All right, let's read the text here. It says, if a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction. You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do mistreat them, and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will burn, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children fatherless. If you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a moneylender, and you shall not exact interest from him. All right. Okay, so what are some of the regulations surrounding sexual conduct in this passage here? What's some of the regulations here that we find specifically surrounding sexual conduct?
If you seduce a girl and have sex with her, you're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah. So women who are not married, virgins, if they are seduced or taken by a man, that there's issues going along with that. Why would that be a problem for a woman in the ancient world to be deflowered before getting married? What would be the issue if the guy just said, I'm moving on? Considered unclean? Okay, the woman would be considered unclean, maybe. All right.
Yeah. She's kind of damaged goods. She's not going to have a husband.
Damaged goods? Damaged goods? No husband? You guys like that word, I guess, huh? Yeah, you did. You never heard that? Well, there you go. That's a new one. You can take that. You can use that. Deflowered. That's going to find its way into a lot of sermons now. Just telling you. All right. Yeah, damaged goods. What'd you say, Tim? I got distracted.
Well, any man that knows that is not going to marry her.
Right. Typically, they weren't going to marry someone who was not a virgin. Virgins were very important back in that ancient world. Women especially, but why? There's cultural reasons that are going on here beyond the issues of sin and sexual immorality. I mean, those are the big ones we see there. Those are obvious to those of us who read the Bible, right? This would be sinful and all that. But what's the problem culturally, socially? Maybe you don't know this, and you're about to learn a little bit about what was going on in the ancient world. Part of the problem was men culturally, not in Israel, but just culturally in the ancient world, could go around and have children with as many women as they wanted. I know, it's unfair. But a woman needed to have only one man so that there was an issue of lineage. If you didn't know who the father was, this was a big deal. Culturally, it was a problem. And they didn't have tests to figure out who the father is. So there's some cultural issues as well as sinful issues that are going on here, where you marry this woman, she gets pregnant within a couple of days, but she wasn't a virgin when you married her. Is this illegitimate children going on? I mean, there's a lot of cultural things going on here as well. So it was important, but the other issues that were brought up is true as well. Nobody would want to marry her for different reasons. And to have children, to be married and have children in the ancient world for a woman was a big deal. It was important. Especially those who are in the nation of Israel. Eventually you hear what God says to them. Children were a blessing. If you had a farm, you had lots of kids so they could work, right? You got to get some more so you can, and they can rescue one another from, having children and all that was a big deal. And a woman who was not a virgin would unlikely to get married. And so there's a lot of issues going on there, but this was actually protection for the woman. This really was protection for the woman in a sense. Even, and we'll talk about these, I'm sure, at some point, you'll find people who rape women in the Old Testament, in the scriptures. They do horrific things. And the woman doesn't want to be let go. She wants to be bound to this man now. Not because this was a great thing for her, but because of the issues of having children, because of the issue of being considered worthless or useless or whatever. I mean, it was not an ideal situation. But when you read through the scriptures, you'll see this is a big deal for them. For women, they wanted, this was part of who they were. So God is trying to protect the woman by saying if a man comes along, seduces her, or even takes her by force, he is obligated. He's trying to protect the woman. He's obligated to make her his wife. You're not just going to go around, hopefully, having sex with all these women because you're going to be marrying or financially responsible. Let's say the father, right? In this scenario, the father doesn't want that to happen for whatever reason. Maybe he's angry that this man did something wrong with his daughter. Well, he's obligated now to pay some money. It's a way that God is trying to regulate and protect the women here. So it really is a big deal. God is concerned. If anybody ever tells you that God is unconcerned with women, you know that they don't know what they're talking about. The scriptures are full with God trying to protect women in all kinds of situations. He thinks highly of women.
But you had to pay the family off.
Yeah.
That was it.
Absolutely.
So if you had a child, a girl, then if you wanted to take her hand, you were going to pay.
Sure. There was a bride price. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, there was bride price.
You still pay that, right?
If
the father doesn't
deflowered her, yeah. And yes, you would still have to pay.
What happens with the girl then? I mean, is she just disowned to all of, or is she not available to anybody else?
Unlikely that anybody would want to marry her, but the father may very well be. You could imagine, I could imagine, somebody takes my daughter by force. I might not be thrilled to have them in my household, right? Might not be happy about that. So you could understand God is trying to protect the women, but also trying to do the best he can with broken people. People are broken. And so he's working through all that. So unlikely that she would get married and she would remain in the home with the father and the family there. But that is a scenario that could happen.
Well, it's unlikely, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't.
No, it does not. It does not mean that. Doesn't mean that couldn't happen. There were instances of that, but unlikely. And so they needed to pay. And part of that would be because she's not able to get married, they're getting the bride price for her. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this already. Why do you think God is concerned about their sexual conduct? Some of this is important. It's sinful. He's trying to protect the women. There's cultural issues going on, but there's also some bigger issues that are going on as well. God is trying to protect the nation of Israel sexually, because one of the other things we didn't talk about it was bestiality. It's condemned here. That's not to go on. And so there's a sexual purity that is meant to be a part of the culture of the nation of Israel. What's a big reason why God is trying to keep Israel pure? And part of it would be sexually.
Genealogy for Christ.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Jesus is coming through this genealogy, so they need to be, and they don't do a great job of this throughout history. But can you imagine if they were just if they had no regulations, how bad things would be? But Jesus is going to come through this lineage, so God is attempting to and wanting this nation to be holy and pure and separated from these other nations, and the sexual aspect is part of that. Because Jesus is going to come through them. Israel is the vehicle. It's the truck, the transportation that God is using to bring Jesus on the scene later on. And what is the issue with Jesus? Why does he even come on the scene? Why is this important?
He's gonna save us.
He's going to save us. He's going to save humanity. So it's a big deal. This is part of God's plan. So part of these purity issues are revolving around God wants his people holy, yes, and God is using them to bring Jesus in. So there needs to be some of this issue here. He is born to a virgin because he is divine and human. So he doesn't have a human father, he has a divine father. But are you saying, are you wondering if the connection with a virgin being married and things of that nature?
Oh, the pureness and that's because she is pure and because she is.
That could be. It could be. She's of the lineage. There might be an issue of purity there. I'm not sure. I hadn't really thought about that. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, it's proof that he's supernatural.
Well,
Not just
yeah,
another one of us.
that's true. That's true.
I think that probably is the biggest reason.
There are people who believe, and this is an error, but they believe that Mary was born immaculately. Maybe you've heard of the Immaculate Conception of Mary. She was born kind of like a virgin as well. And the reason is so she could be pure for Jesus to come through. Now, the Bible says nothing about that. That's clearly not something in the Bible. But there are those who would want to see that purity of Mary kind of along the lines you're saying. And so they would say, well, she would have to have been born immaculately special, and so that she could be pure to house the vessel, which is God. But that's not it's not biblical. I don't think you need to go that route. Paul's right. Part of this virgin birth is to show that this is miraculous, but part of it is Jesus is both God and man, and he has to be God and man. He has to share in our nature, in our flesh. He has to share what we have in order to save us. But in order to save all of us, it has to be an eternal sacrifice. So he has to be God and man in a sense. They have to come together that way.
Because didn't Joseph then marry her so that it wouldn't look like she was a deflowered girl before she got married?
He does marry her. He does take her to be his wife. And he's told by God not to worry about that.
Like a hidden thing, like a hush hush. They didn't want it to look that way.
Yeah, God doesn't want her to be cast out. He wants her, again, protection for her, and God says it's okay, you can take her. It wouldn't have been common knowledge for the average person to believe that this was miraculous necessarily. Some may have thought she was like, what did Joseph think? He thought she had been deflowered, right? That's going to be our favorite word tonight. And so he's not going to take her. he's going to put her away quietly because there's a conflict within Joseph. The conflict is he's a righteous man, and the righteous act would be to have her taken care of because she did something. She's betrothed to someone else. She's married to someone else doing this. The righteous thing to do would be to put her in front of everybody and have them take care of it. But there's some compassion in the man as well. There's something there where he says, I'll do it quietly. That's why he does it quietly, because he doesn't want harm to come on her. You got a thought?
Not on this subject.
Okay. Are we back to Exodus? Okay. We took a long route back.
If you think about it, the other countries around have no laws like this. They worship by having prostitutes in their temples and in their high places, under the trees.
Mhm.
That was part of their worship. So God's really protecting the purity of his people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. He's protecting them. There's a purity. Holiness needs to be separated. God is separating them from the nations around and the practices that they would be involved in. Absolutely. So there's a lot going on there. Ethan. My voice, buddy. All right. So what do you know about sorcerers, sorcery? Because there's like one line in here about it, right? Everybody here is a practicing sorcerer, right? That would be problematic according to that. If that was the case. Anybody know anything about what is considered sorcery and those kinds of things in the Old Testament?
Well, one thing, they look at the stars.
Sorcery associated with the devil or Satan?
It would definitely be associated with demonic things, at least in God's eyes. So satanic, demonic, absolutely. The cultures around would not have thought they were worshiping Satan or demons. They would have thought that they were either following their deities, or they would have thought that they were doing something appropriate, mystical, magical, those kinds of things.
I mean, is that not what we were looking at when we were watching the legs? When they were challenging
Yeah,
John's legs?
that's right. That's right. You had those magicians who were off doing that kind of thing, fabricating these things. Yeah, there's 6 passages that use this specific word in the Old Testament. It's in 2 Chronicles. There's a couple in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Malachi, Daniel, a bunch of different passages. But there's also the concept. You'll find that there are different words used for similar practices, and some of them had to do with just magic and what you would think of as magic. Others, sorcery, and there's something slightly different about that. We would think of diviners, people who are looking at tea leaves or looking at the stars. We have that today, don't we? Like horoscopes, witchcraft, all of that would be kind of encompassing. Necromancy, which is speaking with the dead, raising the dead, speaking with the dead, those kinds of things. Ouija boards, that stuff today. That's exactly what Ouija boards are all about. If you've ever, have you ever heard of a Ouija board? Some of you have. Okay, all right. Yeah, Ouija board. You had one time?
I can keep it.
We're gonna have some. We got all kinds of things coming out tonight.
I hate it today.
Out of the day. Okay. All right. So just fellowship for a day, and then we'll let you back in. Yeah. Go ahead. Somebody online?
I have a question. Why do you think that is there any significance between this admonition about putting sorcerers to death right in between two sexual situations? I mean, it doesn't really seem to fit.
Well, as Paul had kind of brought out, there may be some overlap in the practices that were happening. We know pagan worship, anyways, incorporated temple prostitutes, things like that, but it may not have anything to do with one another. There may not actually be a significance with it being wedged where it is. It might, but it might not. This is kind of a listing some things get a little bit more information, a little more than others, but you'll find expansions on these laws elsewhere in Deuteronomy and other places. There'll be more given about what the necromancers or the diviners or the sorcerers are doing and all those kinds of things. So I'm not sure that there's anything significant. There might have been some sexual stuff going on within sorcery and magic. That's possible. But it may just be that it's a listing. That's the way I take it, that it's really just a listing of some major issues. Now, the problem with these practices of looking at the stars or consulting the dead and all of those is that you remove Yahweh from the picture. You remove God from the picture, don't you? You remove the one true God, and it becomes an attempt to usurp God's authority. We want to know the future. Well, who knows the future? Well, God knows the future. We want to know. Most people who go to mediums and consult the stars and horoscopes and Ouija boards just today, what do they want to know? Typically, want to know the future. You don't typically go and say, what did I eat yesterday? Right? I mean, you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. Am I going to meet this guy or this girl? Am I going to win the lotto? Am I going to do these kinds of things? It's about the future, and God is the one who knows the future. So there's a usurping of authority there. Other things that they did in the ancient world, they wanted to make it rain, so they would do these kind of magic things, or they wanted someone to fall in love with them, or they wanted to curse the other nations and who might be coming against them and things like that.
James, what
Yeah.
would you put what Jacob did with the flocks and the sticks in Genesis with Laban? Would that be in the order of a superstitious practice or a divination of some sort?
Yes, to both. It would be a superstitious practice, but he is trying to
Use something other than God to get an outcome.
absolutely. He's trying to manipulate reality. He's trying to work magic.
So, I mean, I was even thinking of an application today with, you see ball players that have superstitions, don't step on the chalk, or I don't know, just all kinds of goofiness that I think gets wrapped up in our culture, but maybe we haven't taken a second look at it to be like, I should put my hope, my faith, and my trust in God, and I don't need anything else.
Well, that's true. That's true. Though I'm wanting to, at least initially here, and maybe after more time or somebody can explain it in a different way, but I'm kind of wanting to put those in two different categories. Superstitions and those kinds of things, they might, well, I think that's what Tim is trying to kind of wonder. If these superstitions, you carry the lucky rabbit's foot, well, that's superstitious. That's
I don't like that podcast.
so.
I don't believe it.
So some of these things, I want to say that I think maybe on a case-by-case basis, we should evaluate them. Some things are going to be superstitious. Don't step on the crack lest you break your mother's back, right? Well, that's kind of a silly kind of thing. I don't think anybody believes that's really going to happen, but it could be a superstition. There are people who have OCD. There are people who really have a difficult time, and they do rituals. I call it a ritual. They're not trying to make magic happen, but they go to the door and they make sure it's locked 7 times. And that's Mike, clearly. Or they go to the, before they leave their car, their driveway, they're checking the mirrors. They're doing these things, but that is not on the same level as working magic and things of that nature. Though I think the medallions, the rabbit's feet, all these things certainly could be, because that's what they were invented for. They're lucky charms, right?
It's considered an idol, right?
Could be an idol. Yeah. or just a magic talisman. But here's the problem. Here's the rub. We do it with the Bible. People will hold the Bible up and they will kiss it and open it and have it in their homes, but they won't read it. Or they'll think that just having a Bible in their home makes their home holy, or these kinds of things. They make the Bible a ritual talisman, and they don't worship, or they're struggling to worship the God of the Bible. We don't worship the Bible. We worship the God of the Bible. There's a big difference. So people can do that even with things that are good, like the Bible and whatnot.
Can't we just see that as some little thing that we do? I mean, wish upon a star, which gives you stars, and people make wishes.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, how many times do you really say, oh man, I
Sure.
really wish tomorrow I get a promotion? Who expects to go into the work randomly getting a promotion?
It's something to think about, but that's why I said I think we need to think about it on a case by case. And a lot of times it is, a child blows out the candles at their birthday party. Like, make a wish. None of us, right? None of us are thinking like you're saying. Some of these are just cultural things that have gone up. It's not bad to think about them, though. It's not bad to reevaluate what are we saying and what are we doing. But our motives are not to think this, candle blowing it out is going to get me something. So I do think that there's some differences, and I would want to examine them on a case by case basis to say, could this be an idol? Could this be a talisman? I would suggest that looking at your horoscope and really that's probably something we shouldn't be doing, because it's clear we shouldn't be looking to the stars as our future and those kinds of things. But I would want to say some of these things are sillier kind of kid kind of things that we've made a game out of that may not be something we need to worry about. But of course, if somebody is convicted over that, then conscience would drive what we do. And
What do you think about Mardi Gras?
Mardi Gras, isn't that like a drunken? Mike, we have to have a talk.
No, I've been down there. And I don't like New Orleans. Voodoo.
No, I know. But you said that's a good one.
I mean, when I was, in motels when I was a kid, I went
Yeah.
like my grandfather's from Louisiana, and they had things on the wall, crosses and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. And
It's kind of creepy.
it was to me.
Yeah.
Well, down in Louisiana, people take part of it with Mardi Gras. Whenever I don't think they really understand what it's just a party time.
Well, I think you're right. Probably most people just think of it as a party.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't get involved in Mardi Gras anyways, because it doesn't seem to be a good kind of party. Yeah.
I know, my Lord.
Seems chaotic. All right, we're running out of time. Let's move on a little bit here, see if we can finish this up before we are shut down, because we're gonna be shut down. Oh no. What about him?
Was he, would he have been a sorcerer? The one that
Well,
he wanted money and the donkey?
Balaam was a true prophet of God in the sense that God actually spoke to him, and the words were,
He wasn't that sorcerer.
we don't have an indication, as far as I know, that he did any kind of magic sorcery. He was a prophet of God. God spoke with him, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it. So it wasn't a shock to him. Now, he goes off the rails, and God is angry with him. But I don't think, at least the information we get from the Bible doesn't seem to put Balaam in the category of a diviner. He might have been. I don't know that there's anything that says that. Maybe I'd have to look again, but nothing comes to my mind. All right. How are God's people to treat the foreigner and the sojourner? The people who are strangers to their community. Hospitality, treat them good. And the reason is
You were sojourners in the past.
love your neighbor because you were sojourners in the past, because you've come from this. And so you know how it feels to be mistreated. So don't mistreat other people. So see here again, God is protecting the outcasts, the foreigners. A lot of these laws are all about protection of the community or the individuals, those kinds of things. All right, finally, how are God's people to treat the widows and the fatherless? Yeah. That's right, to be kind, to be respectful, to take care of them, to do good to them. And if you will not, what will God do to you? According to the text. Yeah, they're going to kill you so that what? Now he's talking to the men. You will. That's right.
And then no father.
That's right. Take care of them. Otherwise, you'll be in your family will be in a situation like that. Again, in the ancient world, this would have been a big deal. People would want their children to be taken care of, their wives, their household, those kinds of things. So God is looking out for them.